and it's skybound with the Talking Joe guys. Everyone calm down. We're here to talk comics and it's skybound with the Talking Joe guys. Everyone calm down. We're here to talk comics skybound. Hey, it's me, Mark, and welcome to Talking Joe. Today we will be talking about Scarlett, issue 5, which is just out, concluding that series. And we will be talking to Marco Ferrari, the artist of the series. So, I think without further ado, let me bring in my co-host, Tim, who will be talking to me and him. Here he is.
Hello, Mark. Tim. Hello, listeners and viewers. Let's bring in our guest.
Here we go. Here's Marco.
Hi everyone. Thanks for having me.
It's great to have you on. So Marco is an Italian comic book artist from Milan. He's nodding. I've got something right so far. Credits include Phantom Red from 2016, KILLBOX Chicago 2017, and then Patience, Conviction, Revenge 2018, and more recently Frontiersman and its sequel Antioch. But we are here today really to talk about his entry into the Energon Universe with the Scarlett miniseries. There we go. So we're very excited. So should we start with one of our regular questions, which is tell us about where you are now and the space that you're in. I can see something on the wall and some figures.
This is my studio. I'm at my working studio. You can see I'm an avid collector of toys. Here I have some toys here, some over there. The few I can have here, but this is the cover from Frontiersman series that Matteo Scalera has done as a variant cover. I have some stuff here, some comic book stuff. As a nerd, I like to,
and is that a little one-piece figurine over your shoulder?
Over my shoulder.
There, by your is it your left hand where it was your left shoulder? You've got three figurines. I was trying to figure out who they were. On the other side. It was the other side.
Under the
art.
Wall.
Yeah.
Side. Here. There's one.
Yes. Bring that hand down. Under the.
Right under the art. Yeah. Right under the. Oh.
You mean this? These are my Ninja Turtles.
Okay. You got some Ninja Turtles.
This one are from the 2012 series, and I'm also I like to custom them, so I color them I like it, and probably somewhere you can see this small one. It's my first.
Yes, and I see a hardcover on the top bookshelf. That looks like a pizza box.
This one. I got it, and that one was my first Ninja Turtles. The small one you can see here. It's hard. Okay, this one is my first one from when I was a kid. So I like Ninja Turtles too. But,
Marco, I have two follow-up questions. One, is there a drawing table? Because I see a computer. Do you have a drawing board, a drawing table in this room?
Yeah, this is my drawing table. I work traditionally, so
And also, where are all the G.I. Joe toys?
That's a good question.
Or where are all the Transformers?
I have none, actually.
Wow.
and that's something I'm sure a lot of fan even when the series came out, were weirded out about, because I'm actually and we joked a lot with Kelly too. I'm too young for the GI Joe toys. Here in Italy, they came just as a toy brand, so no comics and no TV show, and they stopped producing them for Italy even before I was born. So I've never actually had the possibility to get in contact with them. I knew Transformer. In fact, I like mechas and robots. Uh, I don't have any right now here because I have a place where I build them. But with Transformers, it's a little simpler for me to get attached to Transformers because they're robots and I like them. But yeah, I have none actually of those toys.
Well, maybe someone can bring you to a convention in the United States, and you can get your first G.I. Joe figure or a Transformers toy. You are in Italy right now?
Yeah. Okay. I live here in Italy. I'm in Milan. For who ask, I won't be at the New York Comic Con, even though I know there are some panels about the Energon Universe. I couldn't attend this year because of other works asked me to stay at the table. But yeah, I would really love to have some GI Joe toys. Actually, I designed one for the Energon Universe that is a character in Destro, and it's one of the mysterious character of Destro that's has been recently revealed. That is Chameleon. Yes, this one. It's my design for the characters.
Wow.
I would really like to. If it will ever happen, a toys of this one would be really cool.
If you were not,
yeah, sorry.
If you were not the artist of the Destro series, you were drawing Scarlett, and this character Chameleon is not in Scarlett. How is it that you designed the character?
Because at the time I was already working with Scarlett. They were a little late with the develop of the Destro series. That's why they came a month after and not just a couple of weeks like a Cobra Commander and a Duke has done. So they should have been back to back, but they couldn't. So to cut, sometimes they asked me to develop some stuff they needed for that series so that they would come in and just work on the series. And that's how I had the possibility to design this new rendition of the character.
Cool.
Tell us a little bit, more about that process. So, what constraints were you given to with the design of this character? Did they just say we need a new character, come up with something cool, or did they give some direction?
Yeah, they gave me some direction. At first, they asked me to design a character that should be like very very close as inspiration to Baroness. They asked me that she should at least that, of course, that was a woman, and she should be a sniper. So as many times I've been told to, if you have to do something, do it bigger as possible to make it fun. So I put her the biggest caliber sniper rifle I could find on the internet, and they just asked me to stick to this old character they had that is the alias for Chameleon. That was an old character, and that's where they just told me, yeah, for the rest it's up to you. So I thought it was fun to have something of a Chameleon coming in, and since she was a sniper, but I didn't want to do like a camo technology that could make her invisible. I thought that the goggles that could like rotate like chameleon eyes and gives the sniper rifle all the data that she sees like very rapidly with those goggles could help her take. And that's it. Basically, that's it.
And in this image, she's got there's a name for it. Different colored eyes.
Yeah, heterochromia. Yeah, it's
heterochromia.
Just fun stuff. I think that was designedly fun to see something weird, since she needs to stand out and look at least interesting when she's not in her suit. I think that those very long hair and this her heterochromia could make her pop in the page.
Mm-hmm.
Marco, can I shift gears? I would like to go back to the beginning and ask you about when you were younger and drawing, what comics you were reading or artists and artwork you were paying attention to, and do you have formal training for drawing for comics?
Oh, I love drawing, and I always loved the comics media. I remember doing comics when I was in elementary school and middle school. I basically has done every lesson. I passed every lesson in high school doing comics without and not listening to any lessons. So yeah, I always loved comics. As a kid, I read a lot of Mickey Mouse comics that they're very popular in Italy for kids. So that's how I also learned how to read, and it's very common. Not anymore, but yeah, I started with that. And I have an older brother. He was into mangas. So when I was in middle school, he basically has done the retailer for me and bought me all the comics that he think I could read. So he avoided like very violent stuff. And I've always been a Marvel fan, like not a heavy Marvel fan, because like you could imagine, but I always read like Spider-Man. And I recall that in my research around the stuff, I came in contact with Cliffhanger, the Cliffhanger anthology by Ramos, Madureira, and Campbell.
The imprint.
The imprint. Sorry, yes, the imprint Cliffhanger, and that was a huge hit with me. I started loving very much Ramos and Madureira, and from there I started searching everything I could find about them in old comics. And at the time in Italy, they print this weird character called Deadpool behind the Venom issues. So I started reading Deadpool, and at that point I was in high school. I was a avid Deadpool fan, and on a issue of Deadpool, there was this team up with Thor, drawn by Matteo Scalera, and that's what basically signed my fate and why I'm here today, because it's been so important to me to see those pages that I said, okay, now I want to do that. I was already in an art school, an high school for art. So after I got my degree, when I graduated from high school, I went to another art school where I started learning how to work on comics with some professional some professionals that already worked on comics, and I started from there. I did my hard work doing everything I could to learn this job. And yeah, that's it. If I had to say what are my biggest inspiration as I grew up, I have to say, yeah, probably Ramos and Matteo.
At my store, we sell Black Science regularly and often. And one of my employees, it's his favorite book and his go-to. If anyone comes in and says, I'm looking for something different, or what's new, or I really like sci-fi, he walks over to the sci-fi section and he pulls out either volume 1 drawn by Scalera or the big compendium of the whole thing. I see a lot of manga influence in your work.
Yes.
And I certainly see manga influence in Ramos and in Madureira, and to some extent in Campbell. Are there Japanese comics that were particularly important to you, or artists who you have been looking to more recently?
I read a lot of mangas. I would be a lie if I say I wouldn't. But as I grew up, I really moved out of the mainstream type of manga. I'm more into the one for an older public, like books that talks about their society or situation like that, more mature type of mangas. So, and usually they're not very interested in the art part. So lately, I'm reading Shinzo Keigo books, and of course Urasawa. It's another big name to add. Inio Zano. They're all great artists, but yeah, you don't look at them for the art. You read them for the story. When I was younger, I read a lot of Naruto. One Piece, of course. What else? I don't have anything. Yeah, sorry.
On your Instagram, you've got an Akira piece that you've done. So yeah. I mean, when you're talking about story versus art, I guess Otomo is, well, it's a great story, but also amazing art, and some of those panels sort of just. And I see that a bit in yours, that there'll be the sort of the simplification, but then in certain panels, like maybe when you're drawing a shark in a giant tank, there's this much more detailed kind of take.
Yeah, I if I have to say, I studied a lot of the 90s artists, those Japanese artists that did cyberpunk sci-fi, so Alita, Akira, and those mangas are my favorites. So yeah, absolutely, you can see those influences. Lately, I'm studying this artist that is called Tetsuro Ueyama, that it's not very known, but actually has done one of the most interesting X-Men manga in the 90s, and very inspired by the Capcom fighting games as style. And I'm really loving his synthesis on the art, on the design, on the line, and I think it's something worth looking at. And of course, lately I'm very into studying Dan Mora art. I think it's very complete and something to look at if you want to grow.
So jumping forward a little bit before we run out of time to talk about the detail of Scarlett, up to prior to Scarlett, you've worked on a handful of series, sort of in the more in the indie creator space, including Frontiersman and Antioch most recently, and then a couple of covers sort of leading in, up into in the Energon space, like Transformers, before launching onto Scarlett. But what is it that you think got you onto the map to be selected as the artist for Scarlett?
I was that's fun. I was as I was finishing Antioch, my last series for Image. I was preparing some sample pages for the Ninja Turtles. The editor there then worked on the was planning the Energon Universe for Skybound, because he moved to Skybound, and he asked me to work on some of the covers that came out as variant covers for Transformers. Duke, one that never came out for Cobra Commander, that is similar in theme with this, so with a main character and a reflection. And when time came out to look at an artist for Scarlett, I was there and available. They were very happy on how I collaborate with them on those cover, and I think that we're looking for also young artists, because I know that Cobra Commander artist is also a young artist. So
another young Italian artist.
Yeah, and they really think they wanted to bet on some young blood to work on this project, and I'm very happy to have been selected for it.
Marco, when you mentioned Ninja Turtles sample pages, were you trying to pitch those to IDW, or were you pitching them to Skybound? Because I have heard that.
No. I was pitching them to IDW.
Okay.
At the time, they were looking for an artist for some filling in Last Ronin, and I had I was trying to see if they would take me, but the schedule couldn't work out. So when the editor started working on something else, he recalled of me, remembered me, and said, "Oh, yeah, maybe I could call Marco about something." And I've been lucky.
Now I have a question about this Scarlett #1 cover. The sky, the mountains, and on the snow, that looks like, is that Copic marker? That's marker or ink wash?
They're mixed media. They are Copic marker and charcoal and pencil to do the trees in the mountains.
And then on Scarlett, the dark parts of her costume, how's that?
It's screen tones, or they said me it's also called Zipatone.
Zipatone, yeah.
Okay.
Wow.
Zipatone is the brand name.
Okay.
Screen tones are what they are. So is this on the actual paper? You're using an X-Acto? You're using a knife?
All the art I do with screen tones, I do it with them.
Okay, you're not adding them digitally in Photoshop. You're
showing a scalpel.
I have an X-Acto blade just for them. Yeah.
Okay.
Wow.
I really love them. I think they're very fun to use.
So if anyone buys your original artwork from Scarlett, they are getting the full experience of the object of the material.
Yeah.
That's great. And on a lot of the covers to Scarlett, we do see Scarlett in this new sort of designed outfit with the what color, sort of a lightish brownish top with a kind of a black tunic underneath. But I don't think, unless I'm misremembering, I don't think in the actual interiors this outfit appears at all.
Yeah.
Can you tell us about the design of the costume?
Of course. At first they showed me a toys they wanted the character to be based on, but Hasbro at the time wasn't sure on which design to use for Scarlett, so they decided to have me base it on a more traditional Scarlett outfit. They thought that probably the leotard was very modern, so they told me to cut it out, but to keep the color palette and everything else. So we tried to have a like official design for her, and that's why it's here. But as we were working on the series, if people read my prior comics, I very much like to have the character evolves during the story, and their outfits and their condition while going on with the mission keeps changing, sometimes for the worst. But as I was designing Storm Shadows, like lightly redesigning Storm Shadows, I found some very interesting art from French artists that passed away that work on some design for the G.I. Joe. I think that they were very interesting and very fun, and I tried to synthesize some of those ideas in a battle suit for Scarlett mission, and that's why she came out with this white battle suit. And since all the miniseries ends up being this multiple issue secret mission, she ends up being always with that one. Yeah, that's it. That's why.
You talked a bit about the back and forth with Hasbro. How was that experience? Because I could see that they've definitely asked for one change, because we saw the preview images in the back of the, online and in the back of the book, and then we saw the published book, and I did pick up on one little change, which was on Jinx. Initially, she had a lot spicier red dress than the one that saw print in the final version of the issue.
Sometimes they wanted to, not that they weren't happy with the art. They just wanted to be sure that everything was as family friendly as possible, not in a bad way, like actually not giving any sense of sexualization of the characters. And I tried, because the first issue, it's the mission, it's happening in a human trafficking situation, so it's been weird to and it was also the first issue I worked on. I was very anxious of their feedbacks, and I was scared on how people would have received my art. It was my first time in the spotlight of a big public, of course, so there was everything there, and I tried to convey as much as possible the feeling that that place wasn't as cool and shiny as it should be. That was something dirty, probably, and so that's probably was a little bit too much. So they asked me to tone it down a little bit.
Marco, did you have any interaction with Lee Lowridge, who colored Scarlett, or did you have any notes on your artwork?
We had Lee coming in when the art was when I was finishing the first issue, so we didn't. I always work color myself, so it was my first time having an actual colorist. So it's been a little bit hard for me at first to prepare the type of art that would help also Lee come in and understand what was happening. So at first we had to a little bit give some notes back and forth to get on the same page. But in the end, the last issues were very smooth. We didn't have to do much, if not like sometimes something very particular that maybe the art couldn't convey easily for him to understand. Like in this issue, at page 2 probably, or first, I don't recall which page is. Storm Shadow cat on page 2, cutting off a person. There is I did a very, very small gap in the first panel to have like the the light of the blade coming through, and that's something I had to say to him to do because it was missing at first, but now it helps understand that basically this was cut, not only the border of the comic, but also the the enemy chest.
Yep, got it.
Exactly.
And sort of talking about actually color in this issue, I was interested in that the very last page of it, where you've got Storm Shadow sort of holding up his Energon sword in the sky, and then there's like it's lightning and maybe a hint of space in the top. Like, what do you think? What are we kind of trying to read into this panel from the from that color and what's going on there?
I admit I don't know how much I can tell, but it's very much. I think that I put some inks also in the first page of this space, like galaxies that you can see the radiating. Let's say that the metal it's made, it's probably not something that you can find on Earth, and that's why you can cut through everything, and it's indestructible. So that's why.
Vibranium, adamantium, nth metal. How long does it take you to draw a page? Do you work 5 days a week, 7 days a week? Do you keep a schedule? Do you wake up every morning and do a certain thing?
I work every day. For the happiness of my girlfriend, I work on weekends too, and I try to have a schedule, of course, because it can becomes very tiring for the brain to work till late. So I always try to get up as early as possible and work through the day. And when I'm particularly fast, and I'm not a fast artist at all, I can do a page a day. But if I can take my actual cruise velocity, I would do half a page a day, so I can like check everything. But yeah, usually a page a day is what I can do.
So did each of these issues take you a month? And when did you finish the last page of issue 5?
Last page of issue 5 has been finished a month ago.
Wow. Okay.
Yes, it's been finished. For we had the schedule to finish the series the 28th of August. We lost some days in the complex of all the series, so we ends up finishing at the 30. So like 2 days later.
You're talking about your final day of drawing, or also color and letters?
No, my final day was that day. So of course, adding 1 day of delay adds up to everyone else. So, but in the end, we finished everything on time, and the issue I think came out very well. I'm very happy.
Mark,
I was just going to say, what can you tell us about the series that maybe you think is an interesting fact or story that maybe we haven't talked about yet, that we might not even think to ask? Putting you on the spot.
I don't know. Let me think about something. No, there's something fun. Snow has had a very short screen time or page time in this case, and some people ask why. Because for the reprint of the first issue, he is there with the other characters, so they thought that probably he would be there more. And the funniest part is also that the few times we see him is not doing something in snow, but it's a tiki bar in a jungle. And that's something Callie wanted to do to like mess up with people expectation. And I think it was really fun. I really liked Snow Job.
Yeah, he's a great character.
We are now at a half hour plus 6 minutes, so I think we're about to say goodbye to you. So I have two quick wrap-up questions, and then I'll toss it to Mark. Can you tell us either what you're working on or something that you will have coming out soon?
Won't come anything very fast this year from me, because all this stuff I'm working on will be announced in 2025 and the second quarters of next year will be announced properly. But I'm working, of course, on a series that will come back from DC. I published on my social that I just received some DC boards to work on. So I'm working on a DC book that it's an old series that is coming back. And I'm the artist for a humanoid book that will come out next year too. So I'm working on those. I'm having my ear on those two big projects. They will have more than 100 pages each of them. So big books, a lot of work, but I'm very happy. And
if Skybound went to knock on your door in the future and say, do you want to do one more tour around in the Energon Universe, what would you say?
For everyone that loves the Energon Universe, they're really working with the teams, and when a team is formed, they will always come back on rotation to work on something for the Energon Universe. That's the idea they have. So yeah, I'm probably will be back on the Energon Universe,
but not for a long time.
Not for a long time. They will have their plan, and there is characters and books that will fill in the space between every miniseries and the comeback of those characters.
Cool. Well, that was my other question, was what Mark just asked. Mark, I'll let you wrap up. Marco, thank you. Thank you so much.
I had one final question was, Tim, can you hold up the page in issue 5 that has got the Cobra Troopers on them? That page there. Because when I was doing research for this, I was thinking about what's the design of those troopers, and I looked for, and I found this image of the Hot Toys trooper. Did that play a part in your thinking of drawing that panel?
Yeah, they asked me to be faithful to those characters, and asked me to have them as for most of the characters to be faithful to the line, the toys line that are actually available for this, like, not secondary, but for troopers and this kind of characters. Yes, they asked me to do that.
Yeah, so I think, unfortunately we're at time. I'm sure we could talk for a lot longer, but thank you very much just for taking the time to tell us a little bit about your work on Scarlett. Very, very interesting, and lots of exciting little tidbits in there as well. So that was great to hear.
Thank you for having me.
Is there a Marco? Is there a
sorry.
place? Is there a place
yes.
people can find you on the internet or places?
My name is my handle on basically every social media. It's Marco Ferrari Inc. With MK at the end, because unfortunately Marco Ferrari is very how to say it? It's very common name, so I had to find a handle that could easily point to me. But yeah, that's my handle on everything. You can find me on Instagram, Twitter, Blue Sky, Threads, basically everywhere with the same name. So
cool.
Exactly.
Brilliant.
Yes.
Thank you so much for taking the time and joining us. That was great.
Thank you, Marco.
Thank you for having me.
Cool. My pleasure. And yeah, maybe we'll talk at some point again in the future. You never know.
Yeah.
Okay, so that was great talking to Marco, wasn't it? It got a few little tidbits and hints of things to come and all of the rest of it. That's very exciting.
Yes. Now let's talk about issue 5.
So issue 5 of Scarlett came out on the 9th of October 2024. So the last and finale for the series. So the blurb says, everything that Scarlett, Storm Shadow, and Jinx have been planning comes to a head, and the future of the Energon Universe will change forever. The road to G.I. Joe 1 in stores November the 13th ends here. Boom, boom, boom. So it was brought to us by the regular team of writer Kelly Thompson, artist Marco Ferrari, I know that guy, colorist Lee Lowridge, letterer Russ Wooten, editors Ben Abernathy, logo and publication design Andre Juarez, and production Ashby Florence.
Let's have a look at the covers in the gallery.
Okay, cover A is drawn by Marco Ferrari and colored by Lee Lowridge. There's a body language sort of stable, which is if you have two characters who are either back to back or almost back to back, looking in opposite directions, that shows that they're gonna face off. They're sort of in opposition because they're heading in separate directions. So here there's a mostly black background. It's Cobra logo in the background. It's three-dimensional, and a subtle cue that Marco Ferrari is a very talented artist is that he's not drawing the two-dimensional logo, and he's not asking a colorist or a letterer or an assistant to slap on an like a ping file of the Cobra logo. He's drawing it, and then he's adding in these small bits that show that we're actually a little bit under it, and we're looking slightly up at it. Speaking of looking up at something, Storm Shadow is a little taller than us here, and he's actually looking back. He's either looking at us or he's looking at Scarlett, and Scarlett is also subtly looking back a little bit. She is not holding a weapon here, but Storm Shadow is the MacGuffin sword of this miniseries, and I should say the magical mystical goal sword. I think it might not be fair to call this the MacGuffin, because I think this is a more important prop than that. This is
magical mystery swords. Yep.
This is a striking cover, and it lines up very nicely with the previous A covers if you have them on a shelf at home or at a retail store. There's also, for as much lack of detail as there is in the top third of the cover and sort of the left side, all of a sudden there's a ton of detail on the bottom left with the wrapping around Storm Shadow's wrist, and then the gauntlet armor on his other wrist, and the sword is glowing. And so this is very much a cover that is representative of the issue. This is not a specific scene, right? She's not in that costume, but he does get the sword. It does glow, and graphically, compositionally, there's a sword sticking out of her here, though of course it's behind her. And in the issue, she does get hit with a sword, right? Oh, no, she gets shot with a bullet. Anyway, in a previous issue, she gets hit with a sword. Okay, cover B. Cover B is drawn and colored by Sia Oem. Scarlett is doing a backflip toward us and holding arrows in right hand, kind of like back on issue 1's cover, and shooting from her crossbow an arrow at us. There's a color burst behind us. There's no background. And the color burst is an unusual sort of rainbow arrangement of aqua in the negative spaces and sort of a rainbow yellow-orange or orange-red-purple in the sort of bursts.
A bit like a flat chrome.
Yeah. If you were far away, you might think this is a foil stamped cover. You might think this is a hologram cover. In a way, it sort of alludes to the 1982 Hasbro Hector Garrido painted explosion burst, but also there are just lots of covers in comics where there's no background and there's just sort of lines and or color acting as a burst. I do like the zipatone here. Scarlett's hair is, maybe it's shorter because it's in a ponytail. This is a nice cover. It's not my favorite. Cover C, which is the 1 in 10 variant, is drawn and colored by Gleb Melnikov. Scarlett is standing in a big swath of white, which is actually sort of negative space created by Storm Shadow, not physically standing there, but sort of graphically looming over her in the background, much larger than her. But he is physically looking at her. So this feels more like poster design and less like a specific drawing of a place or a scene. Melnikov is drawing the costume that Ferrari has created, revised for the series. So we can note that although Scarlett never actually wears this costume inside the miniseries, she is in it on both some Ferrari covers and also some other covers for this miniseries. Slashing across the cover at almost halfway up and down is a horizon of red, I think from a sword slash, although it's sort of rougher than that. So let's say a very, very dull sword with some vertical lines where it's bleeding. And even if it's not actually blood, if it's just sort of, red ink, red paint, it graphically separates Scarlett and Storm Shadow and creates something of a middle distance. She's got a pistol, she's got an eyebrow cocked, and she's holding a sword, though not the magic sword. I should say, not the sword from outer space.
And Tim, this represents the final part of the combined covers on screen. I've got 2 through 5.
Yeah, Mark had made the point earlier that though these are connecting, they're not as a literal sort of geographic, physical connection, the way that the Duke miniseries was, the way that the Cobra Commander miniseries was. And I would agree, the negative space behind Storm Shadow on the cover to 2, that's white, and it becomes sort of the background in 3, and then, the sort of black in the distance for 4 becomes the black behind Storm Shadow in 5, and Storm Shadow's shoulder in 5 doesn't really become anything going back to 4. So I think the way that I would describe this is that Gleb Melnikov is an illustrator much more than he is a designer, and that in terms of geometric shapes and composition, his strength is much more in sort of the technique of drawing people and costumes and weapons and, you know, flying and fighting and, you know, mountains and grass and trees and walls and screens, and not so much arranging shapes and sort of larger design. Okay, cover D is a digital rendering. This is not drawn with pencils and pens. This is by Vasco Georgiev. This is the 1 in 25 variant cover. It's got that 1982 explosion back. We've seen this on all of the G.I. Joe related Energon Universe D covers. Mark, remind me, this is a recent toy, right? Is this a classified toy?
Yeah, it was one of the early classified releases. It was the redesign of the Red Ninja. I think it was just called Red Ninja, the character, who does not appear in this series, but is a, I guess, Ninja Arashikage related character.
Yeah, I get the sense that you know, they're playing a little in many. Okay, you've got these 5-issue miniseries, and you've got to pick 5 characters who are going to show up on the 5 D variant covers. And in some cases, it's pretty obvious, right? Like Duke should definitely show up on, you know, the cover to issue 1 or 2 of the Duke miniseries as a D cover. But you know, you could put Destro on one of those covers because Destro shows up at the beginning of the Duke miniseries, but then you don't have him for the Destro miniseries. And so there's a little bit of a, you know, figuring out who's going to go where here. The Red Ninja never got an action figure in the original toy line, 82 to 94, right? The closest thing was the Cobra Ninja Viper, which was the mail-away aqua recolor of Storm Shadow version 1. But the Red Ninja was entirely an invention of the Marvel comic book. And it wasn't until, you know, some figure multi-packs in the 2000s, right, that the Red Ninja got a proper toy. Okay. So this cover, I see a slight disconnect between the very smooth digital painted rendering style of the character in front of what is either actual blobs of acrylic paint on artboard or a digital approximation of that looks like actual paint on board. Some of these covers have been, you know, painted. I'm really struck by that Paulo Rivera Storm Shadow variant over this explosion back for an earlier issue of Scarlett. But, you know, some of them have been sort of traditional pencil and ink and then digital colors, like Scrap Iron, who just showed up on Destro 4, I think. So you get the whole range. But since this is the character that I have no connection with, it's a version of a character that I have no connection with, it's a good drawing. If I was a variant cover hunter, I don't know that this would be at the top of my list. And then the 1 in 50 cover, which is cover E, is drawn and colored by Taurin Clarke, who's also been doing some covers over at Marvel. He's been Deadpool cover artist for the last 5 or 6 months. And this is Jinx and Storm Shadow and Scarlett rappelling down not a building, but the geometric shape of the Arashikage logo, red on white. And you get the sense that, I get the sense that because of the angle here, the sort of white negative space between the red lines is the finger quotes building. And then the white sort of behind the ETT of Scarlett behind Jinx is like the sky. And this is an example. It's not the best example to compare this cover to the Gleb Melnikov cover, but in terms of not just illustration but also design, like really doing something with geometric shapes. And I'm not saying that this should connect to another cover or could. I really like Taurin Clarke's mixture of rendering on faces and costumes, but also then his very crisp black outline. I have been liking his covers more and more as he's been doing more work the last couple of years. Mark, are there any? Also, one last thing in terms of design here. There's a particular arrangement and overlap of the 3 black chords that these 3 characters are using to repel. And if you were actually doing this, there wouldn't be as much, S curves and flourishing and zipping around. But if you're drawing, the Batarang, if you're drawing Spawn's cape, if you're drawing, Spider-Man's webs, you get to exaggerate and move things around in space to be visually pleasing, and they don't have to necessarily follow sort of normal gravity or like wind currents. And so there's a subtle thing going on here where those 3 black lines are add a lot of movement and animation to a cover that already has a lot of movement and animation. They don't distract. They don't tangent against something or bunch up in a distracting way. This is a very cool cover. Mark, are there any retailer incentive variants for Scarlett 5?
At time of recording, I am not aware of any for this issue. Which is that first? Might be a first.
And the inside front cover.
Right.
Which is always good about listing those, does not list any names that we haven't just rattled off.
Good sense check. Yeah, Taurin Clarke. I think this cover is great. It's one of my favorite from the series, and he's also done a really great cover for, I think it's issue 5 of Destro. I guess it's a nice sort of tie into the interior, because we kind of got people. Not in the interior. We don't have
their altitude.
Well, changing their altitude. Yeah, they're coming down from the top of a tower, let's say, and that is the thing that's kind of being echoed here, even if it's on rappelling ropes. And I guess you can't see someone coming rappelling down on a G.I. Joe cover without also thinking about the cover to 21 in some form as well, whether intentional or not.
Yes, and I like to play my favorite game, compare and contrast, right? 21, nighttime, one character, angled that way. Scarlett 5, it's not daytime, but it's a white background. 3 characters, angled the other way. This cover really makes me think? I think that this cover, I would love this cover to be the back cover of the eventual Scarlett softcover paperback, right? You could put some copy. You could put a paragraph of text on the top 5th where the Scarlett logo went, and then on all the red on the bottom, you'd have to move Taurin Clarke's signature all the way to the bottom left. But you could put a nice paragraph of text and a barcode on the bottom right, back covers don't have to grab your attention, but it doesn't hurt, because if you pick up a book and you flip through it and then turn to the back, right? I think we've all held a graphic novel where the back cover is awesome, and we think, well, that settles it, versus a back cover that's fine, or like maybe like there's no, it's just a hardcover with no dust jacket, and you're like, oh.
Exactly. So what have we got next? I think it's time for a plot breakdown.
Plot breakdown.
In the Sato 2 tower in Tokyo, Storm Shadow finally has the Sword of Life in his hands when a rocket is launched from the Cobra helicopter at the ninja team. As the dust settles, a Cobra squad enters with Cobra Commander in front. He senses Energon and fires at the team. Storm Shadow and Jinx base jump with parachutes from the tower with only 2 parachutes. Scarlett is able to catch up with Jinx mid-air and descend to safety. Later, in a bar in Tokyo, she hands the intel over to Snowjob before returning back to the Arashikage compound, unable to leave Jinx behind. As Storm Shadow, Jinx, and Scarlett all return together at the Arashikage stronghold, the Hardmaster is presented with the sword before handing it back to Storm Shadow, announcing that they will enter a new phase of the Arashikage. As Storm Shadow holds the sword aloft, we end this... As Storm Shadow holds the sword aloft, we end this series on an ominous tome.
Tome or tone?
Tone. We end the series on an ominous tone.
A zipper
It's an
tone?
No, zipper tone's not ominous.
No, it's not.
It's an interesting last page, and as I kind of mentioned to Marco Ferrari, there's stuff going on, and that you could look at that and interpret that in various ways. He was a little bit coy about what the sword might be made of. I don't think it's a huge leap to kind of interpret that the sword probably has got some sort of Energon component in it. And earlier on in the issue, I mean, in addition to this being in the Energon universe and it being a superpowered sword, and it glowing this kind of pinky purple, Cobra Commander somehow in mid-issue senses senses Energon and is able to kind of pinpoint.
There, the Energon is coming from there. There are the fools who are trying to take it.
Exactly. Which is interesting, you know, this sense that he's got. But he did have an Energon tracker, right, in the Cobra Commander series. So maybe this is one of the Energon dots on his special Energon tracker tool that he had. So maybe a little less mystical power and maybe a bit more technological, but both on page one as he's using this sword, and as he's holding it towards the end of the book, we have this background that kind of suggests a space scene and perhaps almost like some sort of bridge to the outer universe. But is that me being too literal? Is the background meant to be a metaphor, or is it meant to be taken a little bit more literally, do you think? Probably all of those sparky bits that are coming off the sword on the last page, that's probably meant to be real.
It's like lightning. I do think the sword is actually glowing and crackling and emanating, let's say, Energon lightning. But it's not as if Storm Shadow pushed a button on it or chanted some special words. It's not as if another element is somewhere near. So if this is literally happening, something about him either holding the sword up or it being in his hand, or maybe it's like it's the vernal equinox or something, but he is somehow activating the sword. And I do think it is actually happening in the scene. I don't think, the night sky sort of now looks like space with no light pollution in the physical scene at the Arashikage stronghold on this final page. But I do think the final page is supposed to look like outer space, because I think if Marco Ferrari weren't allowed to say it did, he would have just said like, oh yeah, I just inked it like space. But we know that, and I'm not trying to sell any artists who've signed NDAs down the river. I'm just connecting I'm just connecting a dot from what I see in this drawing to Globulus. Did Globulus go to space, or did Pythona go to space?
Pythona went to space, yeah.
Pythona went to space, right? So, I got an email as a retailer from, I didn't do the Zoom call, but for the next Void Rivals arc, like something's happening. Like Void Rivals is going to connect more with something, and that's either Transformers or G.I. Joe, or both. And we've known this is going to happen anyway. So I don't think you are. I don't think it's a stretch. How do you feel? Let's talk about the ending. How do you feel now that you have read the final issue of the 5-issue miniseries as a character arc, as a prologue to other stories, as something that is to some degree or a great degree self-contained? How do you find this 5-issue miniseries satisfying as a miniseries, Mark?
I think I do, and to some extent, I think it's because it didn't give me what I thought it would. I thought this was just going to be, to some degree, farming out the two, with Destro and Scarlett, two less significant miniseries, just to tide us readers over between the Josh Williamson doing the proper books in Duke and Cobra Commander before he then does the next proper book in G.I. Joe 1. Whereas I think these things are Destro and Scarlett are kind of standing a series in their own right and telling important stories and doing almost as much work as the other series to some degree. And what I was probably expecting really going into this was this would be Scarlett on an adventure. It would get resolved. It would tee her up to being part of the core G.I. Joe team when it launches in issue 1. And that's not how it's ended. It's ended up much more open-ended, of you going, okay, this story hasn't finished. This story is still definitely ongoing. We know more about Jinx and Scarlett and Storm Shadow and this setup at the end of it, but there's more. There's more of this story to tell, and it's not just serving that purpose of teeing up characters so that they're ready for appearing in G.I. Joe 1 as part of the team, or as a ninja adversary with a Cobra sigil on his chest kind of thing.
I wonder if there's an analogy here with the Marvel Cinematic Universe Phase 1 and 2 and 3, where particularly Phase 1, when we sort of didn't quite know as moviegoers what was happening, that Iron Man 2 is a sequel to Iron Man. Iron Man 3 is both a sequel to Iron Man 2 and also to Avengers, because that Avengers movie had happened between the two, and something exciting happens to Tony Stark in the first Avengers movie, and at the beginning of Iron Man 3, he's dealing with it. And those kinds of sort of leapfrogging connections keep happening. Guardians of the Galaxy 2 is a sequel to Guardians of the Galaxy, but it's also continuing threads, character threads and story threads and MacGuffin threads for the movies that happen between. And some of these, there's more of this or less of this. And some of these, it's like nothing about Captain Marvel particularly informs Avengers Infinity War, right? Because it takes place in 1990, but it sets up that Captain Marvel is very powerful, so that when she does show up and save the day, it's sort of earned. And so I'm starting to wonder if, I had thought that the 4-character miniseries were a way to introduce characters efficiently without overloading a first issue, because G.I. Joe #1 is a team book, and it's a team book against another team. It's going to be 15 or 30 characters plus vehicles. And it's also a way in terms of marketing and sort of hooking the reader to sort of tricking them, right? If you're not buying a G.I. Joe #1, your expectations are different. If you're buying a Duke #1, you're expecting Duke and maybe another Joe and maybe a Cobra. You're not expecting G.I. Joe because he's not on the team yet. He hasn't formed it yet. And what I'm starting to wonder is 6 months or a year into G.I. Joe, is G.I. Joe going to take a break and then there'll be a character special like Scarlett Special or a second Scarlett miniseries that's maybe Scarlett Volume 2 issues 1 through 5 or Scarlett 6 through 10. And if that happens, could that both be a sequel to what happens in Scarlett and also what happens in the first issues of G.I. Joe. Because I have a feeling that in the first issues of G.I. Joe, someone's going to mention Scarlett. And someone might say, we have to go get her. Or Cobra Commander is going to mention the building in Tokyo. But I don't think Scarlett's showing up in the first, let's say, 3 issues of G.I. Joe. I don't think Storm Shadow is showing up. And I could be wrong. That'd be great, right? But the fact that they said in a letters page previously that they're, and it sort of read like a joke, but I take it completely seriously. They are trying to hold off for as long as they can before introducing Snake Eyes, which at this point I think is totally rad. And I think they're sort of doing that with a lot of characters and a lot of elements. And a lot of it has to do with being as different as they can from the long-running other G.I. Joe series. And a lot of it has to do with, I think, sort of the creative and market forces of a 2-year plan that Skybound pitches a 2-year sort of story mega arc for the entire Energon universe to Hasbro. And sales have been bonkers. So maybe very quickly they're sort of adding things and stretching it out. Maybe now it's a 2.5 or a 3-year plan. Or maybe they've got the 2-year plan and now they're working on, you know, the phase that comes after that, after Thanos has the Infinity Gems and stones. And so I think this was great. And it was, you know, because part of what I'm thinking of is the lapsed G.I. Joe reader who comes into my store. And as a Larry Hama fan and a long-term fan, I really want to point to the new issue rack and sell them Real American Hero 308, 309, 3010, or, you know, now Real American Hero Volume 1, which has 301 to 305. But when someone comes in and they're seeing all these G.I. Joe covers and they know G.I. Joe in the ether and they like Transformers and, you know, they like Ninja Turtles and they like X-Men, like Venom, and they say, they're looking at Transformers or Transformers Volume 1. And I say, oh, this is a whole new universe. You can jump on here and you can read just this and just this, or you can hopscotch and read sort of many of them or all of them. And that's a really good hook. So when I think of this miniseries, I'm thinking, okay, for the next couple of months, can I sell these 5 issues to a curious reader? Can I sell the Scarlett trade paperback with all 5 issues to someone who likes Kelly Thompson? Like, oh, I'm reading Birds of Prey. What else might I read? Who likes spy and ninja action? Who's looking for like an action comic where the art doesn't sort of feel like very, you know, traditional, you know, American superhero comics. And by that token, I almost wish that the inevitable Scarlett Volume 1 trade paperback does not have a 1 on the bottom of the spine, because if there's never a second miniseries, that's sort of a weird thing, you know, on a bookshelf at a store. It's like, oh, I don't want to start a series. If it's no, you don't have to, it's the prologue to this other series, and it's very, you have to, the reading order. So to wrap up that very long monologue, I do think that this is both a good sort of character piece on Scarlett, a good sort of dialogue between Scarlett and Jinx. I like there's a great line in this issue about Storm Shadow being a threat to Scarlett. And so I like this idea that there are these bad guys, but then they're also the worst guys. And then you have this great dramatic turn where at the end Scarlett says to Snowdrop, no, I can't come out from the cold. I have to go back in undercover because Jinx is in trouble and we have to know more about this. And so Scarlett is building this whole thing over here, and the monthly G.I. Joe will certainly get to it sooner or later. The question is when and sort of how directly, you know, like, will there be an arc in the monthly G.I. Joe where they like go to Japan and fight the Arashikage? Or is there going to be like a subplot where Cobra Commander like talks to Storm Shadow and tries to make a deal? You know, we get like 1 page every issue for a couple issues, or is it like G.I. Joe Volume 2, collect issues 6 through 10, you know?
Yeah. And I see
the Japanese campaign.
And I think Skybound are good at sort of plotting out a sort of a pathway for things, and it wouldn't surprise me if we got a bit of delayed gratification on this, as you kind of say, that we probably won't step back into Scarlett's world immediately. I'm sure there'll be elements of crossover and hints of what's happening in this main G.I. Joe book, but it could well be that it's a year down the line, and then we get Scarlett Series 2 from the same team, perhaps, picking up this story, and we don't get to get the full resolution of what's happening with Scarlett, Jinx, and Storm Shadow for some time, possibly.
There's also, I think what's more likely is that Stalker or Snowjob says something in issue 2 or 3 or 4, and it's 1 or 2 word balloons. It's one panel, like, what about, who else can we bring in on this? Or as the Joes start to understand what Energon is, the burn bag is a great,
yeah. We're going to see the burn bag.
It's a great narrative device because, Joshua Williamson, or maybe it's already been decided by Kelly Thompson, Joshua Williamson, in however many months he wants, and it might even happen between Scarlet 5, Destro 5, and G.I. Joe 1, right? We may jump ahead a few weeks, and Hawk is talking to Duke and the team, and he's saying, like, you're on this mission because of what we got from Snowjob, from the burn bag. But it's this, it has as much or as little as the next writer needs it to have. And it could also have tantalizingly incomplete information, like something that's, I don't think there's going to be a piece of paper in it that's literally redacted, but like, oh, we have this file, the JPEG's corrupted, we only have half the image. It's like, that looks like a hand. Why is that a giant metal hand, right? Duke's in the other room. Like, what are you talking about? Or it's like, we got all this information on this ancient Japanese ninja clan, but the timeline stops in 1910 or 1950. It's like, well, I guess we know a lot, but we don't know a lot. And so Kelly Thompson, Josh Williamson, the editors, maybe Dan Waters if he comes back, can sort of keep in a teasing but also satisfying way, sort of moving the goalpost. And part of, and again, this bears, I feel like I should repeat this every episode of Talking Joe, not just the thing about G.I. Joe's a hard comic to draw, but G.I. Joe's a hard comic to write because there are so many characters and fans want the core favorites. They want someone new. They want some supporting non-player characters, like Quinn, or a general who's, the general who gives Scarlett a hard time in issue 1 of Scarlett, right? I don't think we're going to see him again, but like, that's not supposed to be a named G.I. Joe character. But then also, like, some reader, it's like, well, I want to see the Toxo Viper. I want to see Tunnel Rat. Where's my favorite obscure character? Where's Ozone? And so I kind of think that the monthly G.I. Joe should just be double-sized every month, whether that's, backups or, artists doing sort of shorter story arcs because they're always doing double the pages. But, I think of something like X-Men, the X-Men franchise, which has like 9 monthlies plus a couple miniseries. And there are so many characters, and I think that's too many, and people actually don't want to spend that much money. And I do feel like, 3 or 4 X-Men books, X titles would sell better or be more satisfying for readers than, 9 or 10 or 11 or 12. But I'm sort of jealous for X-Men. I'm also an X-Men fan and reader. I'm sort of jealous for them because G.I. Joe could have more pages a month because there's so many characters. But, the market doesn't actually want that. And this has been a test the last year. Will the market bear Real American Hero and 2 character miniseries at the same time? And the answer is yes. And this is bolstered by good creative writing, drawing, color, and covers, and also This just the way that it sort of hit at the right moments, and this like another nostalgia boom, and the surprise of the Void Rivals and Transformers connection. But it's going to be a little hard the first month or two. ... I don't know how many months after that, if there's only G.I. Joe, because I would really love the Tunnel Rat 5-issue miniseries. Like, Dan Waters comes back, some other artist we've never heard of, but ends up being great. And it's like, okay, what's another thing that's happening that builds out the world? Like, what's Tunnel Rat finding underground? Energon, he found the moles. Who are the moles? What are they called?
Mole rats. Yeah.
Mole rats, right?
Yeah. I don't think it'll be too long before we start, because there's this great creative energy and desire for collaboration between the classified toy line and the and the creators in Skybound, particularly Joshua Williamson, and we've seen it in the Valkyries appearing on the front cover to issue 2 already, which is a toy only character. So I think will we have that sort of same sort of just creative sort of energy in the air of the toys that are just being released into the shops are the same ones that are going to be being launched and developed as not just toys but as characters in the pages of the comics. So I think that's a really exciting element around what they're going to be doing with the Energon Universe. This prospect of them doing that and it being so early in that process that we don't know, which characters they're going to include, which they're not ever going to get to, which ones are going to be delayed. No one likes Ozone.
Just a little one more bit on that last thought of mine. It's wonderful to have a good new G.I. Joe book. It's really wonderful to have 2. If Skybound, the risk always is, if G.I. Joe went bi-weekly, if it went weekly, if it was double-sized, if it's running almost consistently with sort of a side miniseries that's a character focus, does that creatively drain the Energon Universe team sort of too fast, too much? Do the readers get, dollar fatigue? Is part of the special quality of this last year of the Energon, the first year and a half of the Energon Universe, that we're getting more than we thought we would in terms of pages, not as much as we think we want, right? It's like weekly, double-sized issues. Some of the characters that we love, but also Ozone, Tunnel Rat, Snake Eyes, not every character that we want. And so there's this really fine line that Skybound is walking. I think some of it is luck, is good fortune. But I think a lot of it is also just like editorially and creatively, like an excellent direction and firm hand. I think Hasbro's also in a good place. Michael Kelly saying yes to a lot of things a year ago, 2 years ago, and the people who are there now who are doing that work. I think about like a comparison might also be Star Wars. There have been a lot of Star Wars shows in the last couple of years. And as a kid, I think I always wanted like 7 times more Star Wars than we were getting. More books, more comics, more movies. I couldn't even imagine TV shows. It turns out when I get as much Star Wars as I ever wanted, it's too much and not all of it is amazing. And so, the anxiety you feel when in the 4-week cycle of a month, it's like, okay, Real American Hero comes out this week, and then the next week is Duke or Destro, and then the next week is Scarlett, and okay, well, the next week's Transformers or Void Rivals. That's not scratching my G.I. Joe itch, but it's like there's a week where there isn't anything, and that anxiety is important. Not getting what you want and having to wait a week. I do think skipping a month is too much. Real American Hero team that's now done this twice on Larry Hama's G.I. Joe. But hey, people catch colds. Sometimes art gets lost in the mail, whatever it is. You want to dive into some specifics about?
I was going to say Yeah, we are being teased with more in the ARR space. Where the solicits for G.I. Joe go as far as number 2, so it's going to be at least number 3 before we hear about a second book, which I think there'll be something. But New York Comic Con is coming up soon. Skybound will have a big presence there and a panel, so it may be that we hear some exciting news before too very long. Coming out of New York, which is this month, isn't it?
My buddy really wants me to go, and I don't think I'm going to go. Hey, period. New thought. I told the Talking Joe Facebook group. I haven't actually said this aloud in Talking Joe. Hey, everyone. Artist Tom Riley, who drew the Duke miniseries and is drawing the new Joshua Williamson G.I. Joe Monthly, is signing at my comic book store 3 days after G.I. Joe #1 is released. That release date is Wednesday, November 13th. He'll be at my shop, Hub Comics, in Somerville, Massachusetts on Saturday, November 16th from noon to 4. We're going to have some cool deals that day. Let's talk about Scarlett #5 specifically.
Yeah, so what my sort of big takeaway from Scarlett generally, but this issue reinforcing it is that it's a much more sort of character centric and personal story. It's very much Scarlett's story of this specific mission that she's on and how it ties to her relationship with Jinx, and that relationship driving, I guess, the outcome that's why she doesn't just take that burn bag with her and deliver it in person back to Stalker, but stays in Japan with Jinx. So I think that rather than building out necessarily a universe and stuff, the universe of G.I. Joe in the Energon universe is getting bigger with this, because we are getting introduced to more of Cobra. We are getting this new faction with a super powered weapon, and we're seeing a few more characters. But it is very much, I think, a character-driven story in the truest sense of the word.
Yeah, I think about how long it took Larry Hama in the Marvel run. He starts immediately with G.I. Joe and Cobra, and it takes Destro doesn't show up for a year and a half. And, Zartan, the Dreadnoks, there's another faction, doesn't show up for 2 years. And, the Arashikage don't show up technically until 2 years in, but sort of as a go-to space, as sort of a set of characters with a story. And, one of the challenges that I think the Energon Universe has accepted is having a lot of factions almost from the beginning, but they still feel the introductions don't feel rushed, and the narrative doesn't feel overburdened. And I think part of that is because established readers can sort of, even though we don't know a lot about this Arashikage in the Energon Universe, we can sort of abstractly think back to what we know or think we know or like about the, Real American Hero version of it, or even, the live action movies. And at the same time, nowadays things happen so fast, like you get a movie announcement and everyone knows immediately, and there's a movie trailer and everyone has watched it like an hour later, and a movie's out and people, sort of rush in the first week to see it. But when we were younger, things came a lot more slowly, without the internet. Maybe just some kid on the playground said to you, like, no, they're doing more Garbage Pail Kids. I saw series 5 at 7-Eleven, right? And it's like, whereas now it's like, no, I saw all of series 5 of Garbage Pail Kids on the internet. I've seen pictures of every single card. It's on the top. I'm making this up. It's on the Topps website. And I've already, like, on eBay, ordered a complete set that won't ship for 2 months. And I've already got the NFTs. And also, like, I've already interviewed the artist who painted them for my podcast, right? It's like, it's all happening immediately and now. And so it's funny that the Energon Universe has sort of opened up at the same, slowly and quickly at the same time. You know, I mean, how long did it take G.I. Joe at the beginning in the 80s to have had 20 comics? It took 20 months. And how long did it take the Energon Universe to have 20 G.I. Joe comics? It took 10 months, half that time.
And there's a great thing in the back of this very book where there's an advert for the 4 trade paperbacks. So it's like, you know, for a brand new reader, you can say, well, if you want to get in, you know, you've heard about this Energon Universe, you're a lapsed G.I. Joe fan, you're hearing about this new G.I. Joe issue 1, what do you need to do to get up to speed? You can literally say, you know, buy these 4 books and and you will be up to speed. The road to G.I. Joe starts here.
Okay, while we're talking about the end of the book,
let me mention another sort of thought that I got a bit derailed from, which was about this sort of the way that the reading experience of these miniseries, which is that Destro and Scarlett are coming out together, sort of post G.I. Joe, sort of post Duke and Cobra Commander, and there's this element of, at the end of Duke, G.I. Joe are coming together as a new team, but they're not there to fight Cobra. They've been mobilized to fight to battle an unknown giant robot threat, and that's their sort of initial task. And at this stage, Storm Shadow and the Arashikage know more about Cobra than G.I. Joe do. They're not going to be on their radar at all because they're there to do something else. So we see these elements of like Cobra appears in the last couple of issues. You know, coming in the helicopter, we've seen the trooper, and then we see the reveal of Cobra Commander here, a bit like, you know, Darth Vader sort of descending into a rebel transporter after the path had been cleared by his stormtroopers, and you know, Scarlett doesn't know who he is, but Storm Shadow sure seems to, and you're like, where? They've sort of almost landed fully formed. The last time we saw them, he had a ragtag kind of band of locals, you know, in baseball caps and you know, and mufti, and now he's got a bunch of troopers. Have we missed something? Is there a plot point here that we've not seen? And because Destro and Scarlett are coming out together, we don't know what necessarily time period Scarlett set in versus Destro. What has happened? What have we missed? Will we find out in the last issue of Destro what's happened to get Cobra Commander to this place? So there's a lot of mystery there, and it's only there because we're reading this on a monthly basis as a periodical that we've seen Destro 4 and Scarlett 5 at this point, but we've not seen Destro 5, so we don't know what happens in there as a kind of the next step in the evolution of Cobra. So
I wanted to ask you about this. We realized when we finished the Cobra Commander miniseries that was it that the Duke miniseries takes place mostly between Cobra Commander 4 and 5?
That's right, yeah.
Okay. And so if you have, you know, a timeline in front of you, if you have like 4 horizontal lines, one is Duke, one's Cobra Commander, one's Scarlett, and one's Destro, and you have sort of 5 like dots on them and you can slide it, right? So Mark, can we figure out, based on overlaps or reference points, where certain parts of the Destro miniseries take place, where certain parts of the Scarlett miniseries take place?
So Destro is very much after Cobra Commander.
Okay.
And it's
because they had that talk
Duke
at the end of the Cobra Commander miniseries.
Yes.
It's sort of like
so
you work for me.
Yes. So Destro and Cobra Commander, that relationship is established in the pages of Cobra Commander 5. The Duke series, the resolution there is mostly that Duke confrontation with Destro and his bust up with the bats and stuff. So again, that's very much established as we go into Destro issue 1. Scarlett has got fewer kind of points that you can calibrate yourself with the only real point being that Cobra Commander appears with Cobra Troopers. Right.
But Stalker does show up in Scarlet 1 to sort of start the story. But that's a little nebulous, right?
It's a little nebulous, yeah.
Okay. And then also another, maybe an easier way to ask this question is, we get a sense that Cobra Commander takes place over more time. Duke takes place over less time. Do you have a sense so far of the 5 issues of Destro? Well, the 4 so far, the 5 issues of Scarlet. Scarlet doesn't seem like it takes place over a long period of time.
No,
it feels like
it seems pretty compressed. It's a couple of missions.
A couple of days, 2 weeks, 3 weeks. Whereas, Cobra Commander feels like months. Okay. I love the experience. I love single issue comic books. I want to see the original inside front covers, the ads, the previews. And I keep imagining that there will be a compendium or a deluxe hardcover, which has these 4 miniseries together. And I imagine it would be called G.I. Joe: The Road to G.I. Joe. Just, the same way that. And, or maybe it's just called, G.I. Joe Energon Universe Volume 1. Anyway, and then, G.I. Joe issues like 1 through 10 or the, second hardcover. But I wonder, I think about this when, Marvel does a big event, DC does a big event, and, there's a main mini series, and then it's like all the issues of Avengers and Spider-Man and, Punisher that are happening during that. And then some like side mini series. It's like, well, what are the Runaways doing? Well, they don't have a series. So we'll have a 3-issue mini series just during this event. And it's what they're doing. And then Marvel will do the omnibus. And they tend to, I think, always put the main series first and then all the other series after it. And I imagine that such a G.I. Joe, The Road to G.I. Joe deluxe collection would have all 5 issues of Duke, then all 5 issues of Cobra Commander, then all 5 issues of Scarlet, and all 5 issues of Destro. But wouldn't it be fun if they were printed in publication order? Duke 1, Cobra Commander 1, Duke 2, Cobra Commander 2, or in literal chronological order. That's just some fun food for thought. And if you don't like flip through books and like, read the tiny print on the first page to see like, oh, was any of this previously collected? Or that may not be of any interest to you. I wanted to call out a couple specific story and art things happening in issue Scarlet 5 that I thought were cool. Page 2, panel 3. I don't know that I've seen this before. This is a POV shot from the wound. And, we've seen something a little bit like it. Jeff Darrow's covered a Hard-Boiled issue 3 back in the 90s, where we're looking through the head of the guy that Nixon just shot. And 1 or 2 other artists in comics have done that same kind of cover since then. Maybe it was like Judge Dredd or Lobo or something. But this is not exactly that, because the camera isn't past the ninja that Storm Shadow just slashed. The camera is inside him. And I thought that was a very, and I feel like some of the people who read this comic are just sort of going to like miss it if they're reading kind of fast or a little distracted, because what it is showing is what a giant wound the magic sword just did, which the previous panel is a little unclear on unless you pay attention to the glowing curved line. So I thought this was a really good solution. This is the kind of thing where I can imagine a bloodier version, a more graphic version of this panel gets drawn, and then Hasbro says, "Oh, can you tone it down? Can you redraw this?" And I don't think that's what happened here. I think Kelly Thompson called out an interesting shot in her script, or Marco Ferrari said, "I'm going to put the camera inside the guy." Turn the page.
But if you look at that, it's the blade has cut through his blades with a squick. It's got the purple line of the cut, but then it's got a sort of a disjoin where the folds of his clothing have just shifted, begin to shift to the right, where the top half of his body is kind of becoming separated from the lower half. It's very subtle, but it's there.
You sort of get the sense that it's like Darth Maul at the end of Star Wars Episode 1, The Phantom Menace, where he's been cut in half. And so this POV shot from inside him doesn't actually work in continuity, but I just appreciate that it's different and funny and gross. And it's really just playing up the sort of pulpy violence of it in a way that I don't think Hasbro would say that's too violent. Turn the page, or on the opposing page, page 3, panels 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Ferrari does something really cool with his gutter. He puts this burst in the gutter. This reads both as one panel, but it's technically 2 panels. And so this helicopter shows up, and right here, Scarlett, we see her thinking he's, oh my God. We see this sort of disembodied couple of words, not in a thought balloon, not in a caption box, not in a word balloon. And we had established that Scarlett has a little bit of a running narration in like issues 1 and 2. And I think we dropped it in issue 4. In terms of craft, you could maybe criticize Kelly Thompson for not being consistent on that. I'm okay with it. But this helicopter shows up, and it gets set up because in the previous panel, Scarlett is reacting to a bright light. And then Jinx looks at her, and Scarlett looks back at her. And the graphic element of this gutter, this panel border separation, which acts both as a sort of time barrier, because it's a moment, Jinx looks, and then it's the next moment, and Scarlett looks back. But also because it's drawn like a lightning burst, like a flash of light. The panel language of comics is graphically responding to what is physically happening in the scene, which is a bright light, and you get this like look out, or the sort of, each of the characters is doing a take. They're having a reaction, a gasp, an open mouth eye blink, thing. And I thought, have I never seen that in comics? I've seen it sometimes when Colossus punches something and then the panel gutter border gets like jagged or angular. But I thought, cool.
Speaking of which, back a page, did you notice that Storm Shadow's sword is so powerful that it actually cuts through the panel border on the top right as well?
I was reading a little too fast. I didn't notice that till artist Marco Ferrari said that to us an hour ago. I have seen that. I have seen that a few times in comics. Maybe there's like a Ninja Turtles comic where Leonardo or someone does it. I do like that. That's fun. I want to jump ahead a couple pages. Page 11, which is this one. What a bold use of negative space. And again, it's nighttime and the building's on fire. So logic suggests that whole white swath would actually be, blue, gray, or dark blue, or black, or something, or maybe with some orange and some gray smoke. And Marco Ferrari and Lee Larridge decide to pull the camera way back and really accentuate just how tiny these people are, how big the building is, how high up they are, what a great distance that they have to jump to get to safety. It's really bold. And, if you're a reader who likes maximum detail and you don't like backgrounds dropping out, you might turn the page and think, well, that page didn't take Marco Ferrari very long to draw. I want more lines. And you could make that argument. I do think every artist should have like 1 or 2 pages in every issue where they get to like not draw a giant battle in Times Square. And it's also maybe more exciting than like 5 talking heads. But I think that page, and then the angles on the 2 or 3 panels that come after it, which are jagged, and Ferrari is really good. It's not just drawing, it's not just sort of fighting and poses. He's just very good at this.
Yeah, and sometimes the page that looks like it's the simplest can take the longest time as well. It could be a page that he draws and goes, I could push this more somehow. Let me start again. Let me simplify this,
Or this is the page that looks simple and like it didn't take a lot of time to draw, but Marco Ferrari had to draw comics for 5 or 10 years to be able to be good enough to think of this page and have the confidence to pull it off. So there's that other possible wrinkle. On page 14, also that page and the next page are the supreme expression in this entire miniseries. We're at the sort of emotional apex of Scarlett and Jinx being close friends, and Scarlett worrying about Jinx and sort of getting into trouble to save Jinx and then to save herself. So narratively, you have this impactful 2 pages on top of this graphically exciting and bold, though sparse page. Jumping ahead to page 14, it's a 9-panel grid. Scarlett has successfully gotten away. And I just wanted to point out something that's really tiny that I think readers maybe miss. In the first panel on page 14, do you see this tiny shape here? That's an umbrella, and Scarlett is grabbing a thing. Scarlett is passing, she's passing a restaurant or a shop that has one of those like metal frames that has like 50 or 100 long, clear plastic umbrella bags. And you tie up your umbrella, you close it tight up, you put it in, and then you pull it out. And so you keep your umbrella from getting water all over inside. And she grabs it to put her sword in it. And that's one of those things that, because it's so small, because there are 9 panels on the page, maybe Marco Ferrari, like maybe he made the wrong call. Maybe we need to be closer. I do like this panel. I just want to point out that as a small story point in this scene, Kelly Thompson is having Scarlett do like several cool things in this page to start to blend in, and she like tosses this idea to Marco Ferrari, and he does pull it off, but if you blink, you miss it.
Hey, look, panel 4.
Say it.
She's got a bobby pin in her mouth.
The return of the hairpin. Ladies and gentlemen, when Larry Hama came to the school where I teach in 2012 and read panel by panel all of Silent Interlude to a bunch of students in a lecture on storytelling, and he got to this panel where Scarlett, where Hama and Leialoha draw Scarlett using a bobby pin to pick the lock, and Hama says, do y'all know what that is? Do people still use these? And when I saw this, I thought, okay, this might be Kelly Thompson making a reference. It might also just be a thing that someone with long hair does. And not everything has to be a reference. Not everything has to be an Easter egg. But you know what I actually wrote, Mark? And you know what I'm when you get to your when we get to our 300th or 350th episode and we do another trivia, maybe I'm giving away the answer to one of my talking trivia questions. The hairpin, what I actually wrote was, which we haven't seen since that Paul Pope variant cover. Where Paul Pope redraws the panel from Marvel issue 21. I'm glad you caught that. You are a true G.I. Joe fan, Mark, for catching that. And so am I. All right. Two more quick points on the insides of the issue. On page 16, 3 more points. On page 16, Scarlett's just given Snowjob the news that she's not going with him. And he says, when you ladies are ready, you call me. I'll get you out of there, even if I have to bring everyone. And I thought, is that a promise? This can happen in G.I. Joe 3 or 6 or 12 or like Void Rivals, 17. That line, it's kind of a throwaway line, but I think it is foreshadowing in a good, fun way, right? Because absolutely Scarlett's narrative sooner or later will have her trying to get out, whether or not she's successful. We covered that one. Okay. The final point that I wanted to make is I do really like Lee Loughridge's colors in this miniseries. I do believe this is the first time. Hey, everyone, by the way, Lee Loughridge is writing a comic that Image is publishing right now, drawn by Andrew Robinson. It's called Standstill. He's known as a colorist, but he's writing a comic. Okay. I've always liked Lee Loughridge's colors. I've always liked his approach. I believe this is the first time he's ever worked on G.I. Joe. And I was excited to see him, his name on this miniseries. And I do think he does good work here. This scene where Cobra Commander shows up, particularly sort of, this page that I've already held up. I understand that there's all this smoke. I understand that Cobra Commander is in the same colors as the two guys behind him. And having this blue does set up a contrast for this sort of orange-red here. I do wish this page and this scene had more contrast. If there was something else happening in it, so that the blue, the sort of grayish purple blue that's somewhat desaturated, could play off of a different color. And as an example, that scene that I just talked about, right? So here's an example where Loughridge is using a similar blue purplish palette, and he's offsetting it with all these reds and oranges and yellows, both in the hair of the two Joes, but also the inside of the restaurant. And you could absolutely argue that the Cobra Commander scene, and both of these pages, I don't want to say these look like a rush job or these two pages needed another pass. What I will say is when artists use limited palettes, when they don't do a lot of rendering, sometimes I think, great, this didn't need anything else. And other times like this, I think I'd like a little more color information. I'd like a little more contrast. I'd like a little more color playing off of a different color. And it doesn't have to be the opposite. It doesn't have to be the bluish purple against like red orange. Those are my thoughts for Scarlett 5.
An interesting counterpoint to that page is the last page from Destro issue 4, not long out at this point, where we get to see a full figure kind of unveiling a sort of dramatic kind of appearance from Cobra Commander in the pages of that book. I'm not entirely sure what my point is there, but it's interesting. Cobra Commander making a grand appearance in both series towards the end.
No, I was thinking the same thing. I was thinking, okay, we've certainly seen a lot of Cobra Commander in the Cobra Commander miniseries. And then I thought, okay, wait, I know we saw Destro in Duke 1, and then he was sort of held back until I think Duke 5. Was there a similar exciting splash page or sort of full figure, half splash page reveal surprise? Was there, Mark? Does Cobra Commander, he's not in Duke 5, right? Or Duke 4?
Where are we? I don't think he's in Duke at all.
Okay, yeah. So I was thinking something similar. And then the other image that's been rattling around in my head a lot recently, because my comic book store, Hub Comics, is hosting G.I. Joe artist Tom Riley for a signing on Saturday, November 16th from noon to 4, is the cover by Tom Riley and Jordi Belair to G.I. Joe #1, where the front half is all the Joes, and then the back half is Cobra, and Cobra Commander is standing there full figure, which visually is somewhat similar to this panel in Scarlett 5 and that panel, that final page you just showed in Destro 4. So
I have an I Spy.
Yes.
I spy with my little eye.
I spy the Cobra infantry. So on that page, we definitely see, and we saw in the previous issue, the classified infantryman, and he's got all these sort of this piping, a little bit like a blue new X-Men uniform almost, and we've kind of got these modern takes, the sort of the more constructed face mask design elements on the helmet, which are sort of, because they're coloured to make them pop, so sort of a little bit more conspicuous on the page than perhaps on the figure. And so yeah, definitely taking cues from this guy. But there's also a couple of the troopers have got sort of like a bigger kind of almost flak jacket, kind of more armoured look to them. And I think that was probably inspired by this Hayatoi version of the infantry, which sort of uses a slightly variant design to that look, and this particular Haya design looks very, very, very much like the pose of the figure used on the page itself. So yeah, interesting to see them sort of drawing from probably a couple of iterations of the toys. Yeah.
Mark, can you remind us, since I don't know all the toys, so what we're looking at right now is an image. Sorry, go back to the other one, would you?
Yep.
Okay, so this is the Hasbro classified Cobra infantry or Cobra trooper.
6-inch toy. Yes.
Okay, he's 6 inches. And then go to the other image, if you would. So this is Hayatoy's, Hiya. And
yes.
What scale is this line?
This is a 4-inch modern G.I. Joe toy line, and they're basically 4-inch takes with slight tweaks of the classified designs for the most part. So it's and the licensing of them and the distribution has been a little bit funky. So we've seen a lot of reveals, but not a lot of the toys hitting the market, and they don't appear to have a clear license for sale into the mass market, into the US. So they're when they are coming out, they're sort of coming out sporadically and in only in very certain through certain online stores, etc. So not widely sold or available at the moment.
All right, and then what is this line called? The Hayatoy's 4-inch line. What's it called?
Oh, they're called Exquisite.
Okay, thank you.
It's an exquisite line. Yes.
Okay, and am I remembering this right? Do they come with several hands and heads?
I believe more the hand. I think they come with hands, but not necessarily different heads. But they come with like a little sort of a base that they can be stood on, which has kind of got a little bit of texture to it, a bit of design to it. And there's been very few that have hit the market so far. There was an initial release which was just Storm Shadow and Snake Eyes. Similar look to the classified one. The Snake Eye, the Storm Shadow, in fact, was more the original design that didn't actually, which sort of pushed some of the more classified, updated components like the tattoos and a sort of different face mask and stuff, which didn't actually see use in the classified line in the end, as they sort of dialed back and kept it a bit closer to the more traditional designs. So there was an initially just 2 that came out, and then they unveiled 20 or so designs, and we're gradually seeing some of those actually come into market. So there's a Beachhead that's come out, Cobra Commander, and there was a toy show just in Hong Kong, I think, last week, which had a few more of those on display as physical objects as well.
Okay, and then last question. So classified toys are like $18, $20, $25, right? For a single figure. And if they come with a vehicle or a 2 or 3 pack, they're more. How much are the Haya Exquisite G.I. Joe figures?
I think they're a similar price point. I think you're looking to pay about $25 or so to get one of those.
Okay, cool.
And possibly, depending on where you're getting them from, postage on top.
Are you gonna get some?
I probably won't. I mean, it's easier to say no when they're not when they're harder to get hold of. But yeah, I don't think I'll be branching out into this line. But yeah.
Cool. Well, I've gone through all my notes.
Oh, the letters page.
Oh, it was only one page. Boo! I want 2 pages. Although at least I can't remember what it was. It was like issue 1 of Scarlett and like 2 issues of Destro or something, where it's like some of the answers are like yellow, printed on white paper.
Right. Impossible to read. Yeah.
Like, okay, graphic design 101. Can you please make the color a little darker?
Yeah.
And
black ink on a white page is helpful. Man. Yeah.
I do appreciate, it's like purple logo, purple inside front cover, purple back cover. Great. But I don't need like light lavender letters text, right? Like just make that dark gray, please, or very, very dark purple. Anything besides the fact that it's too short? Did anything in the letters page jump out? Do we know any letter writers? Did they say anything amazing?
I didn't recognize the names, but one of the editorial responses was intriguing. The letter writer mentions Chuckles, and in response, the editor replies, "And a Chuckles series. I like that idea." And as we talked about before, oftentimes in the letters column, they will drop these teases, and I'm wondering whether I should be reading anything into that. Will we see a Chuckles series before too very long?
Curmudgeonly, I say no. The sort of the rules for the editor responding to letters is never say no, because someone writes in, it's like, is Ozone going to show up? How about Toxo Viper 2? I'd love a Toxo Viper 2 miniseries. And if the answer is no, you actually phrase it as, you never know, could happen. And then it's like yes and in improv games, that you don't want to shut down the energy of the enthusiastic person who was kind enough to write in a letter.
Yeah, so he's being overly coy here. He's going, I like that idea, but
and it could be halfway. It could also be that, is this Ben Abernethy? Is that who's answering the letters this month? Editor? Yes. It could be that Ben Abernethy thinks, well, that's a good idea. I will run this by, Kirkman and the writers, and maybe something comes of it. And maybe Chuckles shows up in the main book in a way that he wouldn't have before, or maybe, Kirkman and Josh Williamson think, that's a good idea, let's come up with a pitch. And then Hasbro says, no. And all it took was someone suggesting it and the editor saying, let's try. So maybe.
Yeah, the thing that gives me pause, though, is the fact that we had the Cobra series from IDW, collected as The Last Laugh, and that was such a signature comic focusing on Chuckles for that IDW era. The Skybound sort of creating their own furrow. Is that the expression? Creating their own new universe of new stories, not bound by what's happened in the past. It might just feel a little bit like going back too early to that era of G.I. Joe for inspiration. Maybe not to go there quite so quick.
Right, the same way that Skybound is not going to do a Zanya miniseries, because that really belongs to someone else, not legally but emotionally, narratively. I've run out of things to say. You want to wrap up?
Yeah, should we do a Yo-Joage score on this one? Go on. 7.
I would give this an 8. It's a good ending for the ending that both sort of wraps it up, but also teases more. I think it could have a little more, and I would like a little more going on in the color. But writing and arts, and particularly some of these little art flourishes that I mentioned, are great. A satisfying ending to a miniseries that I liked that is both self-contained but also pushes, although we're not sure how, a bunch of larger G.I. Joe things forward. I'd be happy to recommend this to any lapsed G.I. Joe fan, and also some just general comics fans who want, a kick-ass action spy miniseries, if they were willing to have it be part of something bigger. I want to give this an 8. I'm giving this a 7.
Yeah, I'm definitely in that same space. I think you said it all. So maybe I because I just score higher than you generally. Maybe I'll go 7.5. But yeah,
12.
It's 11T. It was a satisfying ending. Last issues are tough, but it was an interesting resolution and setting up more to come. So yeah, leaves me on a note of looking forward to seeing what else will happen in this kind of story space. So that is us done with Scarlett. Next time we are on Talking Joe, we will be continuing to look into the Energon Universe. We'll have the Destro wrap-up with issues 4 and 5 of Destro. We are definitely looking forward ahead to America's Elite, issue 1, and we should have some content that looks forward to that in advance that I will tease in a very coy way without giving any information about. But Tim knows what I'm talking about. And then when we're not doing all of that, we are sort of finishing up our look at the Devil's Due era with the World War III issues of Devil's Due Disavowed from the distant past of 2007. So you can find Talking Joe on talkingjoe.co.uk. That is the website. And if you go there, you can find links to all the places that we are at. We've got a Facebook group. We are on Twitter. We're on Instagram. You can even do things like leave us a voicemail. We're also on Patreon. So a big thank you to all of our Patreon members, which include Richard, Sam, Bill, Christopher, Justin, Rob, Shane, Simon, Chris, Joe, Craig, Frank, and Mike, who are all getting early access to episodes as well as some exclusive content. Those aforementioned World War III episodes, they've had all of them already. So there we go. Tim, where can people find you when you are not talking to me about G.I. Joe?
I'm executive producer at Atomic Abe, where we write and edit smart, funny video essays on TV and film. Find us there, youtube.com/@AtomicAbe. I own a comic book store in Somerville, Massachusetts. Tom Riley will be signing there in the middle of November. And that's Hub Comics. And I write about G.I. Joe at my blog, arealamericanbook.com.
Very good. So I think that is us done for now, Tim. But before we go, can you just remind people of a little certain something?
Well, everyone, did you know that Nobody Beats Talking Joe, an international podcast?
Laters.
Wait.